people just that shaming that unfortunately is just out there. A lot of blended families they consider themselves to be second class as a result of the way I've been in situations where, and you've probably been in those situations too, where they talk about nuclear family, they talk about extended family, and for some reason, because blended, and here's a crazy thing about it, blended families make up more than 50% of the church, 50% of our society today. But somehow, the nuclear family, and then there's a blended family, and there is this oddball, second class, that type of group out there, which is AKA the blended family. And that just doesn't sit right with me.
Right. It's not, blended families are not an anomaly.
Nope.
I mean, we're everywhere.
It's the blended mix. Hey guys, it's the blended mix.
Blended families mix it up. Stronger together, we fill our cup. From ancient times to present day, blended families are here to stay. We're not second class, we're a house of love built to last.
Hey guys, welcome to the Blended Mid podcast with Calvin and Meg Balfon. So glad that you're here with us today.
Yeah, we are really excited to talk to you today and really tell you who are we and why are we recording a podcast.
Yeah, this has been on our minds to do for quite some time because of our journey. We've become very passionate about blended families, the journey that blended families have. And so I think as we begin this journey of podcasting about blended families, we wanted to tell you a little bit about why are we doing this? Why do we feel so passionate about blended families? Babes, why are you so passionate about blended families?
I mean, when we started this journey, you were the one to first find the first Blended Family podcast on YouTube, and we started watching it while we were dating. And we realized that while there are millions of podcasts in the world, there was a scant handful of podcasts on blending a family, especially couples who talk about it together. There are some amazing stepmom coaches out there, but we had a hard time finding a couple talking about this process. And I think once we started blending a family, I realized, oh, now I know why nobody wants to talk about this because it's hard.
Yeah.
It's really hard, and it can feel very sensitive. It is sensitive. You're talking about your family, your kids, and so I think you have to be careful.
Yeah, and I think for a lot of people as well, I know for at least for me, blended families, the way that blended families begin, the way that it starts, sometime it can be difficult for people to come, I'm a blended family, hey! A lot of blended families begin because of divorce, because of some tragedy, someone died, maybe you were a parent before, and so it's complicated, and because it's complicated, it's hard to talk about, and so you find there's not a lot of people.
There's stigma around being a blended family, and there are the blended families that are adopted families. There's many different types of blended families, but most of the ways that people become a blended family, there's just some stigma around that word.
Yeah, and
there's
I think
some shame there,
a lot of shame,
especially in the church. Yeah.
And I think for me, that's probably one of the reasons why I've become so passionate about encouraging and celebrating blended families, because of that stigma. People just that shaming that unfortunately is just out there. A lot of blended families they consider themselves to be second class as a result of the way I've been in situations where, and you've probably been in those situations too, where they talk about nuclear family, they talk about extended family, and for some reason, because blended, and here's a crazy thing about it, blended families make up more than 50% of the church, 50% of our society today. But somehow, the nuclear family, and then there's a blended family, and there is this oddball, second class, that type of group out there,
Yeah, yeah.
which is AKA the blended family, and that
Right.
that just doesn't sit right with
Right.
me.
It's not, blended families are not an anomaly.
Nope.
I mean, we're everywhere. Where do you find a place for blended families in the church? Where do you find the same type of support or even celebration? It seems to be missing. You really feel like a second class citizen. And that's interesting to me because, most people don't realize the Bible is full of blended families.
That's right. It's in there. It's in there. And it's only recently that we've actually begun to see a few um, conferences to help blended families.
Hmm.
A lot of churches don't even, they have classes for, you know, again, for nuclear families, but nothing for blended family. Because again, we bring as blended family different complexities that sometimes people just don't know what to do
Hmm.
about. They don't know how to handle it. The very fact to just offer a class, again, which we should as a church, we just don't.
Yeah.
But yeah, so
Yeah.
we're very passionate about that because there is so much joy in blending
Hmm.
families together. There's a lot of healing that can take place
Hmm.
together, not just with parents, not just with the spouses, but with kids
Hmm.
as well. And
I
so,
think for me, there's very little examples in the world that are as good as a blended family example of God's blended family, the church,
hmm
because we all are, adopted sons and daughters.
hmm
And so, all of us come from all over and, we walk together, we do life together. Where do you see the picture of that except for with the blended family? So it's
hmm
really special when you think of it that way. And what's happening in the blended family, what I think why there needs to be a lot of support is because of the opportunity for healing and restoration.
healing, restoration, pictures of redemptive love taking place. There's a lot of good stuff out there when it comes to blended families. So we're
Share
passionate about
share what
that.
another pastor shared with you when we first started dating. You guys went out to lunch. You had a good lunch, and he shared something with you that we've carried with us.
He talked about the fact that, when divorce occur, and at some point we need to share that story because I think it's going to be valuable for the people
Mm-hmm.
listening. In the eyes of the children, in the eyes of the kids, whenever kids are involved, love has been broken.
Mm-hmm.
Love has there is this taking away, this shedding away, this brokenness
Mm-hmm.
that takes place. But in the blended family, there is a picture of love and redemption that takes place that the kids are able to see the other half, that okay, I saw how love was broken, but I also saw how love has been healed, how love has been restored.
Mm-hmm.
And if there I mean that is in itself a picture of our world, our lives. Sometimes things are not going to go well, things are not going to go the way you expect it to be.
Mm-hmm.
As a believer, even if you're not a Christian, we are going to have bumps in the road. We are going to go through difficulties. And
Yeah.
from time to time, the big picture is to be able to see how people can be healed, people can be restored, how love can be restored in a healthy way. And that happens again through the blended family. So it's really powerful.
That's so good. All right.
So that's why we're passionate about blended families. But and we just wanted to make sure that you hear our heart, hear our passion. But before we go more into that, I think we should talk about our story about.
Yeah.
Well,
I mean, let's start with who we are, where we come from. I was born Amish. I was born into a subculture here in the US. I grew up in different Amish, then Black Bumper Mennonites, then different cults. So I grew up in kind of a very, very, very conservative, distinctly like culturally rich subculture in the US. My first language was not English.
wow.
My lifestyle, the way that we spoke and thought and talked, it was, it's completely foreign to how any average American out there would have, you know, done anything. It's like I grew up in a different country.
Sometimes it feels like you have.
Yes, it does feel like that sometimes.
Wow. I grew up in the Caribbean in an island called Grenada and spoke English there with an accent. Grew up in a single parent home there in the country. So in Grenada, where I was born and raised, we had the city life folks and then we had the country life. So if you could imagine growing up in the island and then growing up even further into the island, that was me. And then after that, when I was around 5 years old, I moved with my mom to Caracas, Venezuela. A lot of talk about Caracas, Venezuela today, and not a so positive light, but back then it was the place to be. And was there with mom for a while. She, as a single mom, did her thing, working multiple jobs to take care of this little guy here. And so yeah, that's kind of like where it came from as well.
That's awesome. And what's really cool about both of us coming together, neither of us being from mainstream society, is that we connected in some ways that are really unique. We know hundreds of hymns by heart. We both grew up in a very legalistic church culture.
Yep.
Even though it was different, both very legalistic, which I think impacted the way we saw God a lot when we were younger. For me, for sure. For me, growing up in the culture that I did, I had a man-made view of God, a very unhealthy, dysfunctional view of who God is. So for me, when I was in my 20s and I began to discover who God really is after deconstructing and going through a lot of different things, which sometimes that's just an ongoing process, I found out that God wasn't just waiting to pull the rug out from under me. And my view of God began to be restored. But through that, I think motherhood helped change my view of God, becoming a mother. I lived, after I got excommunicated from the background I grew up in, when I was 21 years old. If you know anything about excommunication,
Yeah,
it's such a
what does
big
that mean? What
word.
does that mean? Feels like the Catholic excommunication where they were like,
It's very similar, actually. It's very similar. A lot of the Amish Mennonite belief system would be very similar to Catholicism. But yeah, excommunication, where I come from, it's severe. They write you off. They hand you over to the devil. You don't get to go
sheesh.
back. Everything and everyone you've ever known, you are cut off.
Is
You
it for
can't go
is it
back.
for a specific time frame and
You
then you're allowed to go
know,
back?
that is more what they call the shunning. Sometimes no, I'm wrong. Or I said that wrong. The shunning can go on for a long time. There's another word I'm looking for. There is such a thing where you are in a time of punishment and repentance, and then you're allowed to come back in.
Okay.
However, this was not that. We were cut off, and we didn't do. I didn't do what they would have wanted me to do, to come back and say that I'd been wrong about everything and they were right. I wasn't. I had saw just enough light that I couldn't deny the truth and just go back. And, plus it would have just never been the same. I don't know. So it was really lonely and difficult to be excommunicated.
I had obviously a little different path. After I left, right before I left Venezuela and returned back to Grenada, it was kind of like the genesis of things beginning to change in the economy, in society there, where crime rate began to rise and things like that. So during that time, my mom decided to send me back to Grenada, which is where I was born, with a lady who came to visit. Her name was Sister Nelson. And the goal was for me to go back with this lady to the island of Grenada for maybe a year, and then my mom will join me there. So me and this lady connected. I went back there, and it wasn't until 10 years that my mom came to visit and to kind of like reunite. So I lived with this lady for a long time. She became almost like my second mom. And this lady, whose name is, we call her Sister Nelson, she's the one who kind of like really introduced me to Christianity, to church with her every Sunday, Sunday school classes, youth classes, like every time the church door will open to the point of cleaning the church as well. I was there. And that for me became my formative years of knowing who God was and what He was all about, developing my own personal relationship with Him as it may. And then right before, like when I was around 19, 20, I met this missionary people that came to our church family, and I left Grenada and this is how I came to America. This is how I came to America, and lived with them. And I came to America to become a missionary,
I love that.
which was a little bit different.
We need them here. America needs missionaries.
Yeah, yeah. So I came to Miami, Florida. Was there for a while, and so yeah, that's how I made it over to this side of the world.
That's cool. So you left everything you had known around the age of 21.
Yeah, I came to America right, like literally 3 days before turning 21.
Wow. It's cool how oddly parallel our journeys have been,
Yeah,
because I got excommunicated at 21 and left everything I'd ever known.
yeah,
So where we are now, we are a ministry family, ministry couple. You've been a pastor for over 20 years?
oh yeah. I say that I've been doing some form of ministry, or which is what I'm really passionate about. I'm passionate about people. So I would say over 30 years I've been doing that, some shape or form, whether it was involved with youth,
Yeah.
whether it was involved with young adults, was involved with missions. I am passionate about helping people. I'm passionate about helping those that are down and out, those that are struggling. I love inspiring people because I feel like that's what someone did for me. And so I feel like I want to do that for someone else. I've always worked with a church nonprofit. Well, that's what I do right now. I work at a church and I oversee the food bank and different things like that we do because I love people. And this is probably what steers me towards this blended family thing, is because, again, I love helping people. I love if there's a group of people that feel somehow that they've gotten the short end of the stick, I want to be their champion. I want to be their voice. And for me, it's not just those people. I feel like it's me. It's us. It's our journey. It's our family's story as well. So I'm not just passionate about something that's out there, but I'm passionate about something that happens to me, that where we live in
good.
right now.
That's good. I love that. And for you, being, serving and being a pastor, just like your whole adult life, it's something that comes so naturally to you. When I got married to you, it's been a whole learning curve. We've been together we got married 5 years ago this summer, so we've been blending a family for 5 years now. But I remember when someone asked me around the time I started dating you, they said, well, you're going to have to be a pastor's wife, and not just any pastor's wife, but like a senior pastor's wife. Do you know how to do that? And I just remember thinking, what does that even mean? When I was dating you, I think, here's a man that I can relate to, a man that loves Jesus, and a man that I can build with. We had a lot of things in common. We're also both very entrepreneurial. We're culturally diverse. We've had culturally diverse experiences because I've lived in Japan. I've lived a lot of different places. Since being excommunicated from the Amish and Mennonite Church, I've explored a lot of cultures outside of my own and lived in them, worked in them. And when, all these things you and I had in common, and just that cultural fluency was really cool. But actually, being a ministry family and the sacrifices that have come with that, those have been sometimes really tough. But it's something that we're passionate about. And here's where it gets kind of a missing piece comes together for me with you being in ministry already. I after being excommunicated, and this is a little bit of my testimony, but I really was lost for several years, looking for something. I don't know what, happiness, fulfillment, all these things. I did all the things to try to find it in all the wrong places, as they say. And then living in Japan, while I was living there, someone invited me to come serve at some nonprofit working in anti-human trafficking. And I was very selfish at the time, but also feeling very lost. But I'll never forget the first time, several months in, volunteering at this. Now I know it would have been a shelter, but I didn't even know what it was called. But I met a 14-year-old girl that had been rescued a while earlier. She shared a little bit of her story. I can never forget her story. And also, something got put inside of me that day that called me into women's ministry, even though I didn't know it. That young girl. So like today, I'm very passionate about teaching our daughters, and just serving women, even though I've run from the call of women's ministry, because once I got saved, also in Japan, and baptized and came to the States and got really plugged into the church where you were actually a pastor, people began speaking into my life and saying, I believe you're called to women's ministry. And I was like, what? You're crazy. I'm an artist. I'm a really good businesswoman. I have found out that I really know how to make money and I'm good at it. So ministry, that's what other people want to do to feed their egos. I really thought that wanting to be a ministry leader was an ego-driven thing. And so I said, I'm not interested. I'm not interested in stage or anything. So leave me out of that. But God has continued to invite me into ministry. And then, of course, I end up being a pastor's wife. And as of now, I'm on our church's women's ministry team. No, I'm never on a stage. I'm in the background setting up chairs, or I'm on my laptop designing graphics. But there's so much that's in that like doing that has really helped me humble myself, where I'm seeing women as being human beings, and just it's not about me. It's God saying, will you partner with me, because I'm doing something here. I think that's what a long way of coming around to what we're doing at this podcast. God kept putting this on our hearts, wouldn't let us quit, has people coming to you saying, dude, when are you going to start a podcast? Someone saying to me, hey, when are you going to start a podcast? I'm like, I don't even want to. When are we going to do that? But it's God saying through other people, hey, I am doing something new. I really want to have fun with it. Would you partner with me?
And I think for us, now that I think about it, a lot of the reasons why we didn't want to start a podcast was because we felt like we were not qualified. We felt like because blended family is hard work. We felt like initially, and we still do have that same thing. We're not expert at this. We're not people who have 50 years of blending a family. But I think the key for us is the honest, and we hope this is an encouragement to other people listening as well, that you don't have to have it all together. You don't. Our blended family is a work in progress. Our blended family is developing, is growing. We make mistakes. There's learning curves. But in the process, we see God's beautiful redemptive work happening in our lives. We see a lot of healing that's been taking place. And so I felt, and you felt the same way too, is we don't want to wait until we have it all together, because that all together will never happen. That
It
all
really
together
won't.
is this elusive thing that's out there that we think, oh, one day, we're never going to be this beautiful everything.
Perfect.
Our
Got everything
babes,
figured out.
our house is loud. It's crazy. Our
Yeah.
kids, we have five beautiful kids that we parents of, and we love our kids. But it's this one shouting at this one. If you could be at our dinner
We've
table,
given
it's
up
crazy.
on telling them they can't eat in their room. I mean, oh Lord, but please clean up your room. Please take your food. Please bring our plates back to the kitchen. Please. Please.
And we, the hope
If
for
you're
us,
listening, they're
the
not.
hope for us is that you will embrace your beautiful family the way that you are, and you will stop this self criticism that usually takes place, that whether you're a stepdad like I am, or whether you're a step like Meg is, you will avoid these negative self talks that are so destructive, and that you will understand that your family is beautiful, your family is gorgeous with all of its flaws, and God is working through that. God is working in your heart, He's working in your kid's heart. It's a work in progress.
It is. It's a beautiful work of art. And I think the biggest thing we want to do through this podcast, what you just said, we want to encourage you. We want to start melting the shame
Yep.
around this whole thing. We want to talk about divorce and
Yeah.
melt the shame around that. We want to talk about blending a family. And we want to focus on, we'll be real about the stuff that's hard,
Yep.
but we're also going to really focus on what's working,
Yeah.
and the positive, and
Yeah.
not get too hung up on the stuff
Yeah.
that's difficult.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, the process that you're in a blended family is that you really are part of something that's so much bigger than you. The impact that your kindness or your willingness to just try again for another week, even though you feel like giving up right now, your willingness to show up to learn something new, it's going to impact someone else's life in a way that you may not even fully realize how important your role is. But it's so important.
Yeah. Yeah. And I just want to end with saying this again. You probably hear us say this multiple times, but you're not second class. Your blended family is not a stepchild. It's not like this negative connotation that we not only hear from other people, but most of the time you hear it from your own self, from your own
Yeah.
mind. Those voices come from your mind. We want to just encourage you, to let you know that you're not. Again, that your family is beautiful. Hang in there. You're doing a good job. We are praying for you. We're cheering you on. We have those invisible pom poms, sending virtual hugs. We are just so proud of everything that you're doing to let your kids know, if you have any kids, that love is, or love will be restored in their eyes. Thank you so much for joining us today.
We're not second class. We're a house of love built to last.